Now, I tried writing one of these about a band before, and it didn't work out so well. Music's kind of a different beast for me, maybe because I've made some myself in the past. It can be kinda hard to write about, especially since a lot, and I mean a lot of discussions tend to end up comparing how an artist is now versus how they were in the past. With Muse, I think I have a bit of a case, though. Something happened with Muse recently that doesn't often happen with me. I started to dislike a song because of its lyrics. Well, it's not exactly a first, but one of the other prime examples I can think of is also a Muse song. So today we're talking about the second law in Psycho. Now, one thing I've got to admit before we get into it, Muse was into politics before I was into Muse, certainly. There's evidence of political themes in their music as far back as Origins of Symmetry, but back then it was balanced out and obscured by awesome space rock riffage and songs about other things. Heck, Origin of Symmetry is so cool because it's about the same old themes like love and social activity that we're used to in music, but painted with a fine dose of hard rock paint. In few songs do the lyrics take precedence over the music, and the vocals themselves tend to blend really well with the music. Even as themes of corruption and greed became more prominent in their music, they tended to match it by accompanying it with equal measures of sweet riffage. The resistance, however, started to get noticeably bolder, more direct, on the nose. I mean, just listen to Uprising. Or just read the title. It's pretty clear what's going on there. You can glean just about the whole thing from the title alone. It doesn't relate itself to some time in history or connect itself with some actual cause. It vaguely urges us to fight them. You could see that as a good thing because then you could apply it to any conflict you like. But politicizing your music at all is an alienating choice because you're taking a side that half the world won't relate to. So to do that and not have a target seems weak. Look at something like American Idiot. Maybe it was just the time when it came out, but it manages to be both concise and subtle at the same time. Right from the title, the song specifies American politics, and the rest of the target can be gleaned from the lyrics, which talk about a redneck agenda and rampant paranoia thanks to the media. A pretty apt description of the Bush era after 9/11. Muse never caught that bug, because by the second law they were still singing to that amorphous cloud of political corruption. Supremacy is essentially Uprising 2.0, which is, in its own way, Take a Bow 2.0. Take a Bow, by the way, doesn't really get a free pass, but I don't feel like it's worth its own paragraph because the vocals aren't as prominent in the song itself, and because it focuses on a you, which I am willing to believe is focused on something I'm just not privy to. Plus the actual line, Take a Bow, is subtle and snarky as opposed to They will stop degrading us, and The time it has come to destroy your supremacy. So the bold-faced vague lyrics return, and in full force, on the second law. In this case, it feels like it's less buffered by other songs than on their other albums. While that might not be true, there's something else at work here. The lyrics on the second law are much more grim than on the previous albums. Even the love songs are more about questioning your sanity and the end of the world. And then songs like Panic Station, Animals, and Explorers directly speak to our apocalyptic fears. Maybe it speaks to the fact that this album was released in 2012, the year when the Mayan calendar said that the world would end. But we know from albums past that Muse takes this stuff seriously. And nowhere is this more apparent than at the album's conclusion, The Second Law. Unsustainable is the ultimate violation of the balance between musicianship and lyrical content. The music is actually pretty damn cool, going from an orchestra to an organic dubstep in a matter of seconds and making it all really work. It's fun to listen to, except that there's some woman, not even Matt or Chris, mind you, speaking at us about the laws of thermodynamics. Speaking at us about our own destruction. And you know what? These words, this sciencey type jargon, are the kinds of absolutes that are actually terrifying. They're so direct that they contradict everything Muse says about corruption and politics. This grim, bleak album ends with its bleakest message of all. No matter how much power we take back, no matter how much progression we make, we are all destined to destroy ourselves anyway. Muse has never really established themselves as a fun band. Unlike a band like Blink-182, they didn't drastically shift the tone of their music over the course of their career. They've always been huge and bombastic and heavy, and like butterflies with their hurricanes. And honestly, I'll admit, the second law is brilliant if the idea was to portray the futility of human existence, in which case, good job, I'm suitably depressed. But as an experience in arts and entertainment, it's taxing. Kind of like Mockingjay, which is just bad thing after bad thing. There's no snark or wit. There's no tongue-in-cheek and no overly positive or humorous sections to counterbalance all the grim stuff that's going on. But hey, music has always been political, hasn't it? Look at the Beatles or Pink Floyd or the Rolling Stones. They had political songs. Yeah, but they were handled with a degree of swagger. I bring this up because I specifically want to talk about Pink Floyd, because The Wall is kind of a good reference point, for the same reasons that Green Day's operas are kind of a good reference point. It doesn't beat you over the head with your own demise. The Wall can be pretty depressing, and it's certainly not happy, but it ultimately separates itself from the listener because it's very clearly about this character and his life. Through Pink, the music tackles the issue of war and drugs and the fanaticism of fascism. It makes statements, but never really threatens. It tells a story, albeit one that is firmly established as fictional. So it doesn't carry that same crushing weight, and at the end there's a home spot, because Pink gets to the root of his problems. Want another example? Let's look at a midpoint. Plastic Beach by Gorillaz. It straddles the line firmly between established fiction and singing at you. It's constantly pushing this idea of apathy and environmentalism, but mixes up how it goes about it. Superfast Jellyfish is very tongue-in-cheek and funny, while Pirate Jet is more direct. It has the ability to grate, but also controls its tone fairly well. It at least lets me have some fun at some points in the album. But enough about the past. Let's look to the future. Oh. So Muse's next album is called Drones. You know, like the controversial machines of war that have been coming up in the news recently. You know, like worker bees that do nothing but serve the purposes of its queen. Well, that's hopeful. How about their first song? Alright, it's called Psycho, huh? Interesting. Kind of cliche considering how many other bands have made a song with that title, but with Muse it might be interesting. Oh, it's about how the army makes people into unsympathetic killing machines? And it makes its point by including spoken word between an angry drill sergeant and a pubescent-sounding trainee? Look, even I think the Army's training methods are a little disparaging, but Muse's take on them is downright strawmanning. Not to mention the whole thing is kind of insulting to veterans as they're likened to killing machines and people with severe personality disorders, when in reality, quite a few of them are probably well-adjusted individuals who you couldn't tell from anybody else in society. They couldn't have made an anecdote about how Jimmy was a nice boy, joined the army, did a tour, came back not ever being the same. I'm just not understanding the angle here. While the lyrics are classically on the nose, it's the spoken word bits, yet again, that really disenchant me. They're amorphous, they're campy, they're over the head, and they're only there to shove the on-the-noseness down your throat. And the bitch of it? I have to tap my foot to that riff. And singing Your Ass Belongs to Me Now is pretty fun, but I hate what it's connected to. This isn't some call for Muse to go back to their roots, either. I think it's unfair to ask that of any band. Bands grow, bands change. I accept that. I just ask for self-awareness. Muse is well known for their ambition. They use orchestras, swap genres and tempos at the drop of a hat, and make every album sound like a space opera. You'd be hard-pressed not to call them over the top. I like Muse most when they embrace this sound and sing about sailing a sea of stars, or getting space dementia, or being in love such that the moon is coming down, or, something like that. I'm always hearing claims that their albums are concept albums, so why don't they take the plunge and craft a full-on rock opera? Tell stories through someone else's eyes as a cautionary tale. Represent different cultures and locations in the galaxy with different musical genres. Talk about a future where we're discussing the politics of Mars versus the politics of Jupiter. This is how clever lyrics get written, and Muse is a band whose sound complements this subject matter. There are very few bands that could get away with that. I think that's why it frustrates me so much, though, because Muse has dabbled in this sort of thing before and never fully embraced it. Instead, they spend their immaculate riffage on such earthly matters. It seems out of place. They end up seeming pretentious in all the wrong ways to me. They're doing it in the wake up, sheeple kind of way, rather than the there are amazing things out there and they're so much greater than we are. I hope someday they come out and embrace their bombast and just have fun with it. Until then, I'm going to try and hold out and hope the Drones won't be a total drone. Hey, Dead Inside's kind of a Kind of an appropriate title, isn't it? Frickin' Pop Bass First Singles. What up?